On the night of January 30th, 2026, Buckingham Palace shattered decades of royal silence with an announcement that rocked the monarchy to its very core. The statement was concise, meticulously phrased, yet carried an explosive impact that sent shockwaves through palace circles and beyond. Lady Louise Windsor, the reserved 22-year-old granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II, had officially inherited a secret Scottish estate that the vast majority of the world had never even suspected existed. Known only in whispers as the Grey House, this property was so secluded, so protected, that even senior members of the royal family had never set foot inside its walls. But the intrigue didn't stop there. Weeks before the public announcement, Queen Camilla and her Parker Bowles relatives had been manoeuvring behind closed doors, attempting to wrest control of the estate for themselves. They had surveyors mapping the rugged highlands, lawyers drawing up legal strategies and plans that spanned months. Yet, in the end, they lost entirely. What unfolds from here is a story brimming with inheritance power struggles, family betrayal, and one young woman rising as the unexpected guardian of Queen Elizabeth's most personal and closely guarded secrets. So let's tackle the question everyone has been asking. What exactly is the Grey House? For over 7 decades, this extraordinary property lived entirely in the shadows. No photographs, no media visits, and no formal registry existed to mark its presence. Among Crown staff, it was known only by the code name Site F. Astonishingly, most members of the royal family hadn't even heard of it. The estate sprawls over more than 200 acres of the rugged Cairngorm Highlands, positioned between historic hunting corridors once favoured by Queen Victoria herself. Remote, windswept, and deliberately invisible, it was far from a simple royal residence. It was Elizabeth's personal sanctuary, her soul space. The Grey House was acquired in 1952, mere months after Elizabeth became queen. Yet there's a fascinating twist. The deed was never under a royal title. Instead, it was purchased via a private holding company, managed by a trusted financial advisor who also oversaw the Queen Mother's Highland estates. The message was unmistakable. This property was meant to stay hidden, invisible to the public eye. Former palace staff recall that the Queen would disappear to the Grey House for days on end. She continued reviewing her red boxes and attending to urgent state business, but outside that, complete isolation reigned. No briefings, no press, no formal obligations. Just Elizabeth, the woman away from the crown and its demands. Prince Philip reportedly detested the estate, finding it too cold and too remote. He rarely visited. Princess Anne hunted nearby in her 20s but maintained distance. Princess Margaret visited once and never returned. King Charles, according to multiple sources, never set foot in the Grey House at all. This detail becomes crucial when we consider Queen Camilla's later attempts to claim the estate. Charles's total unfamiliarity with the property left him without the emotional attachment needed to protect it. It was never his to defend. But the Grey House's power isn't limited to its secrecy. It lies in what's kept inside. Multiple palace sources confirm the estate contained some of Queen Elizabeth's most personal, historically significant materials: handwritten letters, photographic negatives, and audio recordings that were never digitized, catalogued, or submitted to the royal archives. Within its walls were diaries from her early reign, correspondence with world leaders like Eisenhower, Mandela, and the Shah of Iran, and perhaps most tantalizing private voice recordings intended for her grandchildren to hear only at certain milestones in their lives. One palace librarian described the collection as, "There's no scandal here, just unfiltered memory." But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Under the Crown Archives Act, monarchs can designate certain materials as off-limits through private deed. Once stored outside official archives, these treasures cannot be claimed by the Crown, by Parliament, or even by the next monarch. They belong entirely to the designated beneficiary. In this case, the beneficiary is none other than Lady Louise Windsor. So, when Buckingham Palace announced her inheritance, it wasn't merely a property transfer. It was the passing of Elizabeth's unfiltered voice, her private legacy, and the true woman behind the crown. Imagine the weight of this. Louise, at just 22, now guards materials that historians, biographers, and even other royals cannot access without her permission. She possesses what no museum can display and what no reigning monarch can reclaim. But how did this quiet, rarely seen young woman earn such an extraordinary place in royal history? The answer lies in a relationship few ever noticed. Between 2019 and 2021, Lady Louise spent extended periods at Balmoral with her grandmother, while other family members came and went. She walked with the Queen in the mornings, read in private libraries in the afternoons, and crucially, helped sort personal papers never reaching the royal archives. Palace staff noted something remarkable about their bond. Louise didn't perform. She just existed. One lady-in-waiting recalled, "She just was present." That presence, genuine and unassuming, became decisive. Queen Elizabeth reportedly saw echoes of her sister, Princess Margaret, in Louise: the intelligence, the love of animals, the appreciation for history, and a comfort with silence, but without drama, rebellion, or craving attention. The Queen had always shown gentle partiality to certain granddaughters, Catherine, Beatrice, Charlotte, but with Louise, it went deeper. In October 2021, just months after Prince Philip's funeral, Elizabeth signed a conditional personal legacy deed, a legal instrument separate from her main estate arrangements. Its purpose was clear: protect the Grey House from public registry and shield it from ever entering Crown estate control. The deed imposed 3 critical rules. The estate would transfer only after all trustees' deaths. It would never fall under Crown review or parliamentary oversight, and Queen Camilla, her children, and direct descendants were explicitly excluded. Palace lawyers nicknamed it Clause 31, referencing the 31st day of Elizabeth's reign. At the time, only 4 people knew: the Queen's personal solicitor, Princess Anne, the Queen's longtime archivist, and Prince Edward. Each swore to secrecy. Camilla, however, began discreet inquiries into the Grey House as early as October 2024, mere weeks after the deed was revealed to Elizabeth's solicitor. She never asked directly. Instead, she probed whether any royal assets had been withheld from duchy estate declarations. Why? She understood a fundamental truth: her public influence was fading. To secure lasting legacy, she needed to control symbolism, property, history, and narrative. By early January 2026, Camilla acted during a private meeting at Burke Hall, King Charles's Scottish residence. She proposed bringing the Grey House under royal stewardship, jointly managed with her charitable foundations. Her pitch was polished: restore historic Highland architecture, host literary retreats for British authors, launch limited heritage tourism, and support rewilding initiatives. Yet, Palace insiders reveal her ambitions ran far deeper. Control of the Grey House would provide proximity to Balmoral, access to sensitive archives, and most critically, the ability to attach the Parker Bowles name to one of Queen Elizabeth's most sacred sanctuaries. She wasn't asking for a cottage, she was asking for geography, legacy, and leverage. The plan went into motion weeks before the formal proposal. Surveyors scouted the region under the guise of environmental evaluation. Architects drafted restoration budgets. Tourism specialists plotted boutique-level heritage programs. The intent was unmistakable. This was a carefully coordinated campaign to claim influence over history itself. King Charles did not publicly reject Camilla's proposal. Instead, he acted with characteristic royal subtlety. He stalled. Meetings were postponed, legal counsel consulted, and the Royal Estate Council asked to review ownership structures untouched since the early 1950s. Then, in a closed session on January 12th, attended only by the King, his private secretary, and 2 constitutional advisors, Charles issued a firm but subtle line: the estate was not available for reassignment, not now, not ever. Noticeably, he made no reference to his mother's instructions, no mention of Prince Edward, and he didn't utter Lady Louise's name once. Instead, he framed the refusal purely as a matter of pre-existing private settlement beyond Crown review. The meeting ended in a silence that was almost tangible, a quiet control masking an inevitable finality. Advisors later recalled that Camilla left composed, yet insiders say her composure barely concealed the storm inside her. She had already begun to suspect the blow that was coming, and 3 days later, Buckingham Palace confirmed her fears. The Grey House had been left outright to Lady Louise Windsor, Not to Prince Edward, not to a shared family trust, not to royal administrators, but entirely, exclusively, and unambiguously to Louise herself. The late Queen's private will, sealed in October 2021, had designated her youngest Wessex granddaughter as the sole and unrestricted owner. This inheritance included all buildings, land titles, archival holdings, and staff contracts. Most strikingly, it included a perpetual right to refuse public access, a single clause that was now circulating quietly among senior courtiers. This house is to remain a refuge, not a monument. Consider the audacity and structure of this bequest. For a moment, the property bypassed Edward himself, flowing directly to his daughter. In effect, it was a dowry-like gift, an unmistakable act of affection, and, to some observers, a clear nod to favouritism. Yet for those who understood Queen Elizabeth intimately, the decision was vintage Elizabeth, deliberate, protective, and willing to make uncomfortable choices to safeguard what mattered most. For the Parker Bowles family, the announcement struck like an earthquake. Tom Parker Bowles had been exploring heritage partnerships tied to Highland cuisine, while tourism advisors had quietly investigated zoning and access regulations near the Grey House for months. Suddenly, all plans evaporated. The shockwave rolled from disbelief into anger. One family associate described the moment. The message was brutal. The Queen drew a line, and they were outside it. Calls ricocheted between London and Gloucestershire. Lawyers were consulted, then dismissed when the ironclad will proved unassailable. At the centre of the storm stood Camilla, confronting a legacy she had never been permitted to touch. Yet, here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Louise had been preparing for this moment in secret for nearly a year. Far from the public eye, she had been visiting the Grey House since mid-2025. Multiple sightings confirmed by residents near Glenmore Village noted a young woman in plain clothing, accompanied by a discreet female protection officer, staying for up to 5 days at a time. Locals were told she was part of a university research team studying geographic history. In reality, she was receiving hands-on training from 2 retired royal archivists and 1 legal advisor, learning the intricacies of cataloguing primary sources, managing estate staff, and navigating private title succession law. She knew this wasn't just a gift, a retired archivist told Royal Insider. It was a stewardship. From day one, she took it seriously. Remarkably, the inheritance's activation was almost invisible. There was no public announcement, no pomp, no fanfare, not even a new title for Louise. Instead, a single line quietly appeared on a government land register. Then, on the evening of January 25th, Buckingham Palace released a simple statement confirming what had already transpired. Observers now see this as a strategic masterstroke by the late Queen. While the Grey House remains private, the legal and symbolic ramifications are profound. Lady Louise is no longer just the quiet granddaughter mentioned in the will. She is now a keeper of royal memory, holding material that no museum or monarch can access without her consent. In doing so, she now stands legally and symbolically above Camilla in one crucial dimension: legacy. Louise did not navigate this inheritance alone. She had 3 pivotal allies behind the scenes. First, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, not only supported Louise, but was the executor of the transfer. According to internal royal memos, Anne ensured the Grey House staff remained under private payroll via the Royal Heritage Trust rather than the Crown estate. She personally delivered the key to Louise in a sealed envelope during a private writing retreat in Scotland. And when Camilla attempted to contest the inheritance via the Privy Purse legal office, Anne shut it down in a single, decisive sentence: "You do not challenge the last wish of the sovereign. You honour it." Second, Duchess Sophie, Louise's mother, operated quietly yet decisively. She blocked any legal audits of Louise's personal finances, prevented leaks about the estate's location, and ensured Louise received intelligence briefings regarding surveillance attempts. According to cybersecurity experts employed by the Duke of Edinburgh's office, Drones and remote cameras were deployed near the estate in late 2025, but none succeeded, thanks to Sophie's meticulous preparation. She anticipated Camilla's desperation and acted preemptively. Third, and perhaps most surprisingly, Prince Edward himself became a decisive factor. In November 2025, just before the inheritance was officially recorded, Camilla reportedly reached out to Edward, asking him to delay the transfer in the name of family unity and legal clarification. Edward's response was sharp and unwavering. "My daughter will not be a placeholder for your ambitions. You had your turn." With that, the final barrier crumbled. The inheritance was finalized, the deed transferred, and Queen Camilla found herself powerless for the first time since Elizabeth's passing. On a quiet January afternoon, Lady Louise Windsor walked through the gates of Greyfriars Church, a centuries-old chapel near the Grey House. No security detail, no entourage, no royal protocol. Yet one detail could not be overlooked. Pinned to her lapel was a brooch never before seen in public. Historians were stunned. An intricate design of silver thistle and Tudor roses, centered by a diamond heart of unmistakable Edwardian origin, with a discreet engraving beneath used only in private correspondence by Elizabeth II. The implication was crystal clear. This was not jewellery, it was a signal. Louise was no longer hiding from royal life, she was answering it. After placing flowers and lighting a candle, she stepped up to the microphone ostensibly for a local charity announcement. But what followed became the most shared royal video clip of January 2026. "The house I inherited is not a trophy. I do not claim it because of my name, but because of what I've learned from those who came before me. Quiet loyalty, private strength, and a faith that protects rather than performs. I will not run from the inheritance of character, and I will not allow its memory to be rewritten for convenience." Then she bowed, not to cameras or the press, but to a stone plaque behind the altar, marked with a quote from Elizabeth II's first Christmas broadcast. "It is not the crown that grants duty, it is duty that gives meaning to the crown." Within hours, the palace issued a rare response, not from the king, but from Princess Anne herself. Lady Louise spoke not as a future monarch, but as a guardian of what cannot be inherited, moral authority itself. Her voice was her own, and the reaction was seismic. King Charles reportedly cleared his calendar for 48 hours, holding a private meeting with Edward at Balmoral's North Wing. Camilla, meanwhile, was photographed entering Clarence House alone, visibly shaken by both the timing and the secrecy surrounding Louise's ascendancy. The British tabloids erupted. Windsor's silent flame ignites a new era. Louise's Grey House speech was quickly dubbed a crownless coronation. Camilla outmaneuvered by the youngest of the old guard. Even Princess Catherine's response was quietly powerful. A single Instagram post of a handwritten note in elegant script signed C. "Legacy is not what we receive, it's what we choose to preserve." Within 20 minutes, hashtags #GRHouse and #WindsorDuty had amassed over 2 million likes. Palace insiders confirmed the ripple effects were immediate. Louise's speech prompted an emergency gathering of the Royal Continuity Office, a team tasked with succession, optics, and legacy alignment. One thing was clear: the Grey House had shifted more than property. It had redefined power, influence, and legacy in the modern monarchy. The response from the royal family to Lady Louise Windsor's emergence was subtle on the surface, but seismic beneath. Within palace walls, whispers ran rampant, concerns that the public's fascination with Louise was forming a shadow narrative entirely outside Camilla's influence and potentially even outshining Prince William's carefully managed formal role. Yet William himself, reportedly, wasn't threatened. On the contrary, sources claim he personally approved Catherine's Instagram post, saying with quiet admiration, "She's just doing what we were raised to do. She's doing it better than some of us ever could." That simple acknowledgement revealed a generational shift. The monarchy was watching, learning, and subtly yielding to a new kind of authority. Within 72 hours of Louise's speech resonating through the global press, Queen Camilla launched her counter-offensive, an elaborate initiative titled The Crown's Compassion, A Life in Modern Royal Service, set to debut at St. George's Hall. The timing was precise, almost surgical. announced less than half an hour after the Royal Collection Trust confirmed Louise's joint archival project with Princess Anne, The Quiet Years. Even the venue selection carried weight. St. George's Hall, a favoured ceremonial space of Queen Elizabeth II, traditionally reserved for state banquets, royal weddings and mourning processions, now became Camilla's stage. Her message was unmistakable. The public must recognise her years of service, her loyalty, her relevance. According to aides, she reportedly declared, "The public must see what I have done." Loyalty is not measured in silence. The response from those attuned to palace signals was icy. Princess Anne refused to comment, maintaining a carefully measured silence, while her subtle smiles at public events hinted at her private amusement and disdain. King Charles, ever the strategist, made his statement through action. He delayed his attendance at Camilla's exhibition by a full day, citing a health review meeting at Balmoral. Only a handful of lesser royals attended, the ones skilled at reading palace nuance. The message was crystal clear. Camilla's prominence had been quietly demoted. The exhibition itself, when opened, was met with lukewarm reviews. Critics noted a lack of emotional authenticity and an overt focus on Camilla herself. Photographs with captions detailing her role beside the sovereign and her contributions to royal duties dominated the narrative, but it felt curated for social media rather than for genuine public engagement. One royal historian observed, "It reads less like service and more like a scrapbook of contested personal ambitions." The backlash was immediate. The hashtag Grey House over glamour began trending, while Catherine amplified Louise's quiet approach, posting a story of Louise, Anne and staffers organising archival boxes with the caption, "Work, not display, duty, not decoration." The post garnered over 3 million interactions within 24 hours, underscoring the power of action over spectacle. Tensions escalated further on the evening of January 26th, in what palace insiders later described as a glass chandelier moment in Windsor Castle's Long Gallery. Camilla confronted Princess Anne. Sources reported that Camilla, visibly trembling, accused Anne of orchestrating Louise's rise and manipulating a child into seizing the spotlight. Anne's reply, calm, measured, and devastatingly sharp, reportedly silenced everyone present. "If the spotlight finds her, Camilla, it's because the public sees what you're trying to hide." When Camilla insisted that Louise was never meant to be a working royal, Anne's response stunned the room. "Neither were you, and yet here we are." Camilla reportedly left without another word, leaving a silence described as funeral grade. Days later, Camilla's exhibition quietly shuttered, citing a reallocation of space for public renovations. No farewell statements were issued. Instead, the royal family's official website unveiled a new banner, The Quiet Years, a curated reflection on unseen service, overseen by Lady Louise Windsor and Princess Anne. A single quote from Queen Elizabeth II accompanied the display. "What is remembered with dignity endures longer than what is displayed for applause." The move was widely interpreted as a subtle but unmistakable palace endorsement of Louise's approach. It was a masterstroke of institutional messaging. Camilla's attempts to reframe the narrative were absorbed, then quietly erased. By early February 2026, Lady Louise's name began appearing in headlines usually reserved for senior royals. Newspapers hailed her as the Queen's true heir in spirit. Universities invited her to speak about youth, duty, and the preservation of legacy. A BBC poll released on February 5th revealed that 71% of Britons believed Louise should receive a formal title and full royal status if she chose to pursue public duties. Support was even higher in Scotland, where the Grey House is located. A remarkable 84% of respondents voiced approval. On February 7th, Buckingham Palace quietly confirmed that King Charles III extended a formal offer, full elevation to Her Royal Highness, Princess Louise, with duties including youth education, cultural heritage, and intergenerational leadership programs. But the offer came with conditions: residing part-time in London, undergoing formal security evaluation, accepting assigned protection, and halting private commercial activities, including equestrian coaching sessions. The proposal divided the royal household. Princess Anne remained cautiously supportive, emphasizing that Louise could serve without losing her identity, while Sophie reportedly confided to aides, "It's not the title that worries me. It's the weight that comes with it." The rise of Louise sparked commentary far beyond the palace. On February 8th, Meghan Markle appeared on a US talk show, making veiled remarks widely interpreted as a critique of Louise. When people are elevated based on silence rather than service, we must ask ourselves what values are being rewarded. Social media erupted. The hashtag #SilencePrincess trended almost instantly, amplified by networks associated with Meghan's past affiliations. Princess Anne and Prince Edward swiftly issued a rare statement. Lady Louise Windsor has neither asked for a throne nor a stage. She has only accepted responsibility when others discarded it. The response was decisive, immediately framing the narrative in Louise's favour. On February 10th, standing on the steps of the Grey House, under a soft blanket of Highland snow, Louise announced her own initiative, independent of palace protocol, the Grey House Initiative, a living trust for duty. Its mission, protect heritage, uplift those who serve quietly, and prepare young people for ethical leadership. The announcement streamed live to over 9 million viewers worldwide. When pressed about accepting the HRH title, Louise paused, then said, "I am grateful for my family's trust, but I believe duty does not require a title. For now, I remain simply Lady Louise." Days later, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles had hand-delivered a personal letter, a tradition last seen when Queen Elizabeth II wrote to Prince William on the eve of his investiture. The letter reportedly included, "Your grandmother believed that greatness grows in silence. I now see she was speaking of you." Louise's reply moved Charles to tears. By mid-February, royal commentators agreed. A new moral axis had formed within the monarchy. On one side were those who leveraged title and public attention. On the other, Lady Louise, who wielded silent influence, shaping the monarchy's moral compass without ever seeking the spotlight. Lady Louise had inherited far more than property or title. She had inherited ethical authority, resilience, and the power to protect the legacy of the crown itself. She endured attacks with humility, acted with courage, and rejected vanity when it was easiest to accept. The question now isn't just what Lady Louise will become, it's what the monarchy itself will become under her quiet influence, reshaping tradition from within. Because sometimes the most powerful inheritance isn't land, wealth, or even a title. It's the choice to serve with dignity, protect what matters, and act with integrity when no one is watching. If you've been following Lady Louise's rise and the unseen power she wields, subscribe for more inside stories of the monarchy, where history, legacy, and quiet influence collide in ways the world rarely sees. Comment with your thoughts. Do you think her path will reshape royal expectations forever?